Welcome to Dr. TSPR show. This is Dr. Tangella Shivaprasad Reddy alias Dr. TSPR. Namaste, Adab, hello. And before I venture into anything, let me introduce one of the most favorite, hugely experienced, and who influences every individual when he utters nature or environment word. And he is none other than Mr. Ravi Chopra. Sir, a hearty welcome to you. We are privileged to have you and to host you. And what should I say? He is an environmental scientist and an activist. And before I flag off his small resume, I want Dr. Mr. Chopra to narrate the incidents which led to his resignation from the Supreme Court appointed committee. This is, I think, on dams and on the impact of dams in Uttarakhand, because he is chairman of two committees. One is that all of a sudden I saw something in the media. Immediately I called, sir, what is happening? And he was gracious enough. He said, let us discuss. So I have not asked what the reasons behind, because this show has happened because of that. So we are very fortunate enough. First, sir, what was that committee? What made you to resign? Then let me come back to all other things.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Tangela. It's a pleasure to be on your show and to interact with your audience. In response to your question, first of all, the Committee on Dams was back in 2013. The resignation has been from the more recent committee, the high-powered committee, which the Supreme Court had appointed in 2019 and had asked me to be the chairman of that committee. As you probably know, the central government has a very major scheme called the Char Dham Pariyojana, and it is meant to widen the roads leading up to the four shrines in Yamunotri, Gangotri, Kedarnath and Badrinath. The roads, in keeping with the National Highways notification of 2012, were designed to be 10 meters tarred surface. And 10 meters tarred surface means that you have to allow about a meter or a meter and a half on the slope side, on the hillside, for drainage, and about a meter on the other side for the crash barriers. So in reality, the width of the road is about 12 and sometimes 14 meters on the curves. Now, in 2018, the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways came out with an amendment to that, came out with a new notification. They said that the experience of the last 5 years in the mountain regions of this country has shown that this width of 12 to 14 meters becomes untenable in the mountains. It leads to a lot of problems like destabilization of the slopes. It leads to landslides. It leads to disturbance of traffic and movement of people and traffic. So in keeping that in mind, the ministry said that the previous notification is superseded in the mountain areas, and in the mountain areas, the width of the road will be 5.5 meters tarred surface, as opposed to the old 10 meters tarred surface. This was the decision of the ministry. Now, in the course of the discussions, and the committee's task was to see that the road widening activities are done in an environmentally safe manner, and people's lives are also secured. Now, the committee met several times. We prepared a report, and throughout the functioning of the committee, we were able to reach unanimous decisions, except when it came to the issue of the width of the road. On that point, the committee, which had 22 government officials and 3 non officials,
My God.
so the 21 of the 22 signed a report which said that they wanted the 10-meter tarred surface, ignoring the new amendment of 2018, and 3 of us said no, it should be following the latest amendment. I submitted the report to the Supreme Court with my own input, saying that I do not consider the width to be worth 10 meters, to be made 10 meters, because of the experience of the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. It wasn't our decision to reduce the width of the road. It was their own engineers, their own planners, their own decision makers. So this case went to the Supreme Court, and the Justice Nariman in September 2020 gave the ruling that the ministry's notification says very clearly 5.5 meters tarred surface. That's what it will be. So the entire Char Dham Pariyojana will be by that standard. The ministry appealed, and the Defense Ministry came on board. The Defense Ministry filed a very interesting appeal in the court in November 2020, saying we need 7 meters tarred surface. So the judge said, one ministry is saying 10 meters tarred surface, another is saying 7 meters tarred surface. It's one government. Why don't you people sit together and make up your minds? And the judge asked the high-powered committee to reconsider the appeal of the Ministry of Defense, which we did. And in the middle of our discussions, the official notification comes from the Ministry of Road Transport that they have revised the 2018 amendment, that for purposes of defense, the road will have 10 meters tarred surface. Now, this came as a complete surprise because the Ministry of Defense had only asked for 7 meters. But when the case went back to the court in on December 14th, 2021, a year later, the new bench ruled that the 10 meters tarred surface on the 3 defense roads going up to Gangotri, going up to Gangotri, Badrinath, and the one in Kumaon, which is part of the road going up to the Mansarovar, Kailash Mansarovar border. So they said for those 3 roads, we will accept the 10-meter tarred surface, because the Defense Ministry cannot be challenged. They know their job, this is their decision, and we will not challenge that. So at that point, I decided to resign because, see, I had taken on this responsibility in 2019 after due consideration, because I'm not that young. I knew that there was a lot of work involved. There'd be field trips, there'd be a lot of climbing up and down mountains. But I thought to myself that if, having spent 40 years in this region and understood the region, its environment, its geology, its culture, if I can contribute to saving the Himalayan geology, let me take up this assignment. But after this judgment on 14 December 2021, I came to the conclusion that it was not going to be possible for me to save the very delicate, fragile Himalayan environment, particularly in the most delicate stretches of the Char Dham Pariyojana, and therefore I thought of resigning. The final nail in the coffin was that the court also gave permission to give relief to the Ministry of Road Transport, saying that if you feel that the other 2 roads going to Kedarnath and Yamunotri, which are not defense roads, if you want to widen those also, you come back to us with a fresh appeal. So there was no point in staying in a committee like this, and therefore I chose to resign.
But here, such a pathetic situation in Corona, people were dying, fear and panic was created all over India. And how is that such important decisions went unnoticed and no one discusses in the floor of assembly, whether Uttarakhand or Uttar Pradesh or wherever, whichever states are or in the floor of parliament? And how is that such a big amendment has taken place? And that too, knowing well, this is going to be a big disaster because once you touch, as a layman, I am telling you, anything which is called hill or hillock, once you touch it, it will get loosened as we find when we went to Himachal Pradesh. That's what they were saying, locals. Now landslides, that everything will start happening, sir. Nothing can be controlled once you disturb the ecology. And the Supreme Court, don't you think they should have a scientific body, as in the case of Corona also we have been demanding. Left and right they pass orders without having any scientific base or any truth in that. How do you look at this scenario? You yourself has experienced. One word.
See, very quickly, the Supreme Court said we cannot question the defense ministry. If the defense ministry has come forward and agreed to the 10-meter tarred surface, it is their job to defend the country. If that's the demand, then we will not question it. They did, however, say, I must acknowledge that, they did, however, say that there are two parts to this question. It is not simply the width of the road, it's also a question of the environment. And they said that this decision is conditional. It is conditional to accepting and implementing all the unanimous recommendations of the high-powered committee. And to ensure that, they appointed an oversight committee headed by a retired justice to ensure that the unanimous recommendations, every other recommendation was unanimous, are implemented. Now,
No, but here I
best
ask you
wishes
because as a curious citizen, concerned citizen, how good the defense argument is when they said only for 7.5, and all of a sudden Ministry of Road and Transport amends it to 10 meters, and the Supreme Court also accepts 10 meters. They don't study anything before they pass a judgment that defense. Okay, fine. If defense is asking for 7 meters, how is that Supreme Court is largely allowing 10 meters then?
Well, this is a technicality, and the technicality is that the court tells the defense ministry and the road transport, you sit together and come up with one number. So the defense says, भाई ज़्यादा मिल रहा है तो ले लो.
क्या ये लेने के लिए कोई मिठाई है क्या? ये पूरा पर्यावरण को ध्वंस करने का है कोई मिठाई है क्या?
That's the wisdom of this nation and its leadership.
Wisdom of the nation and leadership. And as a curious citizen, do you think this is really going to be important for the defense? I'm asking you, 5 meters is not enough?
See, our argument was very straightforward. We said that look, 5.5 meters, 7 meters, 10 meters. We did not come up with the number of 5.5 meters. That number came from the Ministry of Road Transport. It was their engineers, their planners who said, after 5 years of experience, we have come to this conclusion that in the mountain areas, the width should not be more than 5.5 meters tarred surface. Secondly, we did not ask for 7 meters. It was the Defense Ministry that said that they were filing for 7 meters. In fact, a little noticed affidavit was submitted in September of 2020 by the Ministry of Road Transport, agreeing to 7 meters, saying that we are willing to accept 7 meters tarred surface, which will also meet defense needs. So, but very quickly they changed their whole tack, and nobody wants to question them. We explained to the judges very clearly that we also are as concerned about the defense of this nation, the defense of the borders, as anybody else.
Yes.
And we want to see that the movement of the troops is unhampered in all weather.
Yes.
So to ensure that जितना कम काटोगे और उसमें आपका काम चलेगा, तो फिर अच्छा है पहाड़ के लिए. So then the mountains are safe, the people are safe, the army is safe, the movement goes unhampered. So we said that it is not that we want to hamper our defense preparedness. We just want a disaster resilient road. That was it.
आई होप ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर इज लिसनिंग. आत्मनिर्भर यहाँ खा का आत्मनिर्भर है प्रधानमंत्री जी. आप हमारे पर्यावरण को इस तरह आप काटे जा रहे हैं. जब डिफेंस को जितना ज़रूरी है उसको मांग इन्होंने एक्सेप्ट भी किया मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ रोड एंड ट्रांसपोर्ट. फिर बाद में 10 मीटर की किस तरह सवरण किया, क्यों किया, और कोर्ट भी इसे क्यों एक्सेप्ट किया, ये तो आप सोचने वाले. जब कोरोना में लोग मर रहे हैं, इतनी बड़ी आप डिसीशन, क्योंकि ये हर किसी का है, हर एक नागरिक का हक है और उसका राइट है. ये नेचुरल रिसोर्स बिलोंग्स टू एवरी सिटीजन ऑफ दिस कंट्री मिस्टर प्राइम मिनिस्टर, एंड यू आर टेकिंग अ डिसीजन विदाउट एनी डिस्कशन ऑन द फ्लोर ऑफ असेंबली और पार्लियामेंट, जस्ट लाइक दैट. And even the high powered committee, when they wanted to suggest you the do's and don'ts, you don't want to accept. All of a sudden you come out and you are now entire people will try to blame defense, unfortunately, unnecessarily. Defense wanted only 7 meters. Surface and road transport ministry accepted for 7 meters. But all of a sudden why they have amended it into 10 meters? The entire nation wants to know, because चार धाम का जो है आप बोलते हैं ना 80 80% लोगों का जो आत्मा है ये चार धाम का यात्रा है. प्रधानमंत्री जी, कल किसी को कुछ हुआ आपको रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी लेना ही पड़ेगा, क्योंकि कई डिस्कशंस नहीं होते और रक्षा के लिए कोई अगेंस्ट नहीं है. पर बेचारे उनकी जान हो हर वेदर, एज राइटली पॉइंटेड आउट बाय आवर माउंटेन मैन, पहाड़ी मैन मिस्टर रवि चोपड़ा, उनके लिए तो हर मौसम में जाना ही पड़ेगा हमारी सुरक्षा के लिए, रक्षा के लिए. उनको जिस तरह चाहिए पक्का पर्यावरण के दायरे में रहते हुए वो लोग 7 मीटर की जो मांग थी 10 मीटर क्यों किया गया, आपसे लोग सुनना चाहते. ये डिस्कस करिए पार्लियामेंट में. कोरोना क्यों है, क्या है, कैसे मर रहे, उसके भी ऊपर भी, विज्ञान के ऊपर कोई डिस्कशन नहीं, यहाँ पर भी डिस्कशन नहीं. बिफोर वी गेट इनटू सब्जेक्ट प्रॉपर, लेट मी जस्ट रीड आउट ए ब्रीफ of Mr. Ravi Chopra. He is a founder of People's Science Institute, Dehradun, and co-editor of the first 2 citizens report on the state of India's environment, critically acclaimed as a unique effort anywhere in the world. Ravi is an environmental scientist and activist. This is for the knowledge of, again, Supreme Court, those judges, with due respects to them, kindly come to the rescue of nature. It belongs to every citizen. PSI, founded in 1988, is a public interest research and development organization working on natural resources management, environmental quality, monitoring, disaster mitigation, and river conservation. Ravi's own research has analyzed the interactions between the technology and society and environment and development. His current focus is on sustainable regeneration of Himalayan springs and rivers. Author, co-author of many reports, books, papers, and articles, he occasionally teaches courses at reputed institutions. He is a popular speaker, Mr. Prime Minister, and the Transport Minister, including my appeal to Honorable Supreme Court judges. Such a learned man, such a learned committee, having out of 2017 government officers making fun of the high powered committee. That is how these decisions are being made, at the cost of suffering of every citizen of this country. If something happens to Himalayas, everything is gone. In 2012, IITB recognized him with its Distinguished Alumnus Award. He has chaired 2 Supreme Court appointed committees to investigate the impacts of major development projects in Uttarakhand, and was a member of the National Ganga River Basin Authority chaired by the then Indian Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, besides numerous other committees. Since 1967, Ravi Chopra has helped establish several pioneering organizations to involve youth in national building, use science and technology for empowering the poor, rehabilitate survivors of natural and human-made disasters, protect democratic and human rights, and creative education of children, including the mentally handicapped. Ravi did his doctoral research at Stevens Institute of Technology, New Jersey. He is married to Joe McGowan, a disability rights advocate. They have raised 3 children. Their home in Dehradun has a roof rainwater harvesting tank, a kitchen garden, and a garbage composing unit. What else you need? With this couple, I really salute them, and I am really honored and privileged to have such a gentleman on the show. Now we will go into subject proper.
Thank you, sir.
Subject proper, because we had to divide this for the entire nation to understand what is the role of Himalayas in each and every life of the citizen. We are not the last ones. We have our children. Look this side, you have a child. Look this side, you have a daughter. If you look further, both the sides, you have grandsons and granddaughters. They will all have to live on the same mother planet. Are we going to damage just because of our ignorance? वहाँ हिमालयस में हूँ, हमको क्या होगा? मैं हैदराबाद से शो कर रहा हूँ. अरे शो क्या है? हैदराबाद की गर्मी आज देखो. और एक दोस्त से बात कर रहा था, मैसूर में गर्मी है, हैदराबाद में गर्मी, दिल्ली में गर्मी. And I have seen everywhere it is heat and hot. And two media were reporting that unusual temperatures in Jammu and Kashmir. And they were representing another interesting article in Himachal Pradesh, afforestation program, but that is not helping the weather or nature. While you don't want to protect the natural habitation, natural forest, Himalaya ho ya koi bhi ho, we destroy environment, we destroy forest. Then again you want to go for afforestation programs involved in it's our own money spent. It is waste, as we found in Himachal Pradesh. That is why now I ask you straight away, why do you think Himalayas are in danger? Many say nothing will happen to Himalayas. They are formed over a long centuries of this thing, very stable. If they may move to Bhutan. Nothing is going to happen Himalayas. Now I'll start with you. What is that? Shall I start the PowerPoint presentation too?
Yeah. Yes, please. Thank you. I will say next and you move on to the next slide. Is that okay?
Wonderful, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. That's why I
So
kept this resignation. I started with your
over.
resignation.
This is over. Now let's get on with the slide number 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we go to the next slide. I want people to see the next slide very carefully. Is there a way of enlarging the image?
Yeah, this is full screen, sir.
This is full screen. Okay.
Yeah. I'll try to.
So
I'll see.
if you look at the picture on the left, and you will see here that there are 5 red lines that go across the state. These are
This one, no, sir? This one.
different faults or thrusts. They are weak zones in the land of Uttarakhand. And from these weak zones come the mountains. So the southernmost thrust is the Himalayan frontal fault, and from that emerges the Shivalik range, which average height is about 1,000 meters. Then comes the Doon Valley, and after that, the second line in the southern side is the main boundary fault in that pink region at the bottom.
Yeah.
And from that emerges the outer Himalayan ranges, like the Mussoorie range near Dehradun. And the average height over there is between 2 and 3,000 meters. After that, we come to the North Almora thrust, which is actually a breakaway from the main central thrust. The main central thrust is at the top of the pink region.
This
Okay?
one. This one.
And
Yeah, this one.
it's a very sensitive zone. And from that zone, behind that zone have emerged the high Himalayas, the snow-capped peaks, most of which are 20,000 feet, 6,000 meters or more. Okay? Now, at the bottom of that picture, there is a graph. That graph shows you the average rainfall, annual rainfall variation as you travel from south to north. So, you start at the south, at the left end of the graph, and when you hit the Mussoorie range, the outer Himalayas, you get a peak in the rainfall. Okay? At that point, the rain-bearing clouds deposit most of their rain. A lot of the rain is deposited here. So Dehradun gets about 2 meters of rainfall in a year. But on the rain shadow side of that mountain range, then the rain drops very significantly until it hits those mountains that are 6,000 meters high after the main central thrust. And then again the rain very heavily over there. Now this is very interesting because in both these locations, the main boundary fault at the bottom of the pink region and the main central thrust at the top of the pink region. Both these locations are locations of very weak mountains that have to be protected from the rain. And therefore, nature had endowed these areas with very good forests, okay, to protect the rocks from the rain. Okay. Now so keep these pictures in your mind. Now on the right hand side is a picture which shows the five Char Dham routes. The westernmost on the left is the road to Yamunotri. The next one is in the Bhagirathi Valley. It goes up to Gangotri. The third, which starts at Rishikesh, it branches off at Rudraprayag to Kedarnath. Okay, that is the Mandakini Valley. And the one on its right goes all the way up to Badrinath. That's in the Alaknanda Valley. So all the four routes are along river valleys. And finally, there is this one route over here, which was the fifth one on the extreme right, which goes from Tanakpur to Pithoragarh as far as the Char Dham uh, scheme is concerned. But it then continues on all the way up to the Indo-Tibet border, where it crosses over into the Kailash Mansarovar region. Okay. Now, these four river valleys, as you go towards the end of the river valley, there is a region of glaciers. The valleys are very narrow. And if you go to the next slide, you will see that the valleys are also very steep. Next slide, please. Yeah. So the picture on the right, you see how steep that valley is. The slopes are extremely steep, almost right angle slopes over there. Hmm? And on the left hand side is an interesting picture made by one of my committee colleagues, Dr. Dhyani. And what he shows is that the entire region of the Char Dham Pariyojana, except for the Kumaon region in the east, all the four river valleys are within a radius of just 50 kilometers as the crow flies. So at the bottom, you will find, at the bottom of that picture, where you will find Rishikesh is here somewhere. And then at the top are the snow-capped glaciers and so on. So these areas, as I said, are heavily forested. You can see the forest cover of the mountains on the right-hand side. They have lots of ecological riches, and they are fantastic carbon sinks. So, in a time of rising carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, we need more and more, as much forest as we can get. This is also the head streams of the Ganga come from this region, which then support almost 500 million people down in the plains. So, as I said, this area is very sensitive to climate change impacts, and keep in mind that this is also a highly seismic region. Next, please. Now, what the committee observed in this trip was that the slope vulnerability analysis that should have been done in advance was not done properly, hardly done, and that was because the scheme was designed in a hurry. And on one single road, the NH 125 in Kumaon, we noticed that there were 174 cuts in 160 kilometers. 102 slopes were identified as vulnerable. 44 slopes had failed before we got there in December 2019. And there were numerous landslides which peaked in the period of July 1st to 15th August, when there was a major landslide almost every day along somewheres along the Char Dham Pariyojana. Dr. Tangela, could you please click on the picture on your right?
Yeah.
Okay, just click on it.
My goodness. I'll show it once again.
So
Once you
now,
explain, I'll show it once again.
uh, what I'd like you to notice is that the hill has been cut initially. There is a low retaining wall. The height of the hill may be somewhere around 30 meters, and the protection wall is about 2.5 meters. These slopes become quite unstable, and whatever is on them, whether it's trees, bushes, grass, they or forest, it all comes tumbling down, and this kind of forest loss is never accounted. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I'll,
you
I'll
want
just
to
show.
show this again, or
Yeah.
we'll go to another
No,
slide
no.
later?
Such huge forest area. See how it is destroying.
And you see the picture on the left. The picture on the left, there is a school on top that had to be abandoned because it was being now threatened with a landslide. Next, please.
Very sorry state of affairs.
Next slide, please.
Yep. I'm trying to just whether I can improve
Okay.
the.
Now, on one hand, we are facing the threat of global warming. We need more forests, but here the forests are being, I would say, in many places deliberately cut. So you have these great forests in Champavat and Lohaghat of Devdar, virgin Devdar trees being cut. There's no need to go through that route. There is the Kund bypass. The Kund bypass, as you can see, is heavily forested. We told the engineers, please don't do anything here until we have studied this and discussed it with you, your plans with you. They said, yes, okay, we will not touch this forest. But in 5 weeks later, when we go to a place, we see that they are already cutting the road through the forest. That's a picture on the extreme right. And I've circled their machinery, which is in that picture. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, uh, the forest on the extreme left was actually raised by the people. The people actually took care of that forest because it is the source of their water supply. Okay? And on the way to Gangotri, about 10, 15 kilometers before you get to Gangotri, is a fantastic, a huge Devdar forest. And that Devdar forest, the local people believe, is the guardian of the Gangotri temple.
Ah,
Okay, Bhairavnath ka hai wo. ठीक है?
I got
And
Yeah.
they were planning to cut 10,000 trees over there. Devdar trees, not easy to grow. Finally, they agreed that in this stretch we'll make the road 5.5 meters, but still 1,500 to 3,000 trees will go. Next, please. I had suggested in the committee, why don't you go for an elevated road over here? But that's not something they'll do. They want to cut the trees. Next, please.
Why do you think such type of attitude prevails in them?
That you'll have to ask them. I cannot understand that. Next, please.
I'm asking them, why do you want to cut such big vegetation, yaar? Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, as I said, these are very precious carbon sinks, and the official figure is that 690 hectares of forest will be lost officially, something like 80,000, 55,000 trees officially. But mind you, these are the initial figures. After a landslide takes place, trees disappear, forests disappear. That is never accounted for. And as you see over here, when they cut the road, look at the picture on your right. After they cut the road, the muck is simply dumped down the slope. Now, this is illegal, okay? But yet, it is dumped down the slope. And if you compare at the bottom of that range, on the left, there is a river at the bottom, Hemal River. And if you compare that exact spot
full
on
page.
both the pictures, you will find that the
Screen
river
full.
has been covered with the debris that is thrown from the top. So part of the river now is blocked. If it rains very heavily in that area, then that block will be removed by a flood, and that flood will take everything downstream. It will take it with it. Next, please.
Yeah. So this is how it looks before, such a beautiful vegetation. Now you see how they are
Vegetation.
dumping everything down the line.
Yes.
It is not only the road which is cut, but
And it's
down
illegal.
it is illegal. Down the stream,
Yeah.
you are destroying everything. Is this what Pradhana Mantri ji and Supreme Court also should understand before they make a decision? Is this the way to do development?
All these
किसके लिए?
pictures are there in the report.
But I don't think how
Right.
could they ignore this? They see the entire world is watching now on this. How it was and what it is after, and how they are dumping whatever is dug up, destroying down the line, and it is even damaging the Henwall River. Is this the way we are trying to protect the nature? Come on.
Next, please.
Yeah.
Okay. Then there are other serious issues that we have to take into account. You cannot, these are the ends of very narrow river valleys. Okay, they are right below glaciers. So you can't take any number of people that you like. There's a limit, there's a carrying capacity limit. We had estimated that, and we came to the conclusion that Badrinath may already have reached its carrying capacity. Okay, so now if you increase the amount of traffic reaching there, you will have very serious negative consequences. For example, just one example, that the committee estimated that the amount of CO2 that will be emitted in that glacial valley will be very high. Okay, we had given the number. All right. Now you all probably have an idea that roughly the concentration of CO2 has gone up to 400 micrograms per cubic meter. Okay. And what this is doing, this is adding to that. On top of the normal pollution levels, it is adding about half a microgram per day in that valley. Now, what is this emission made up of? It contains tiny particles of soot. And that tiny particle of soot, because it is so small, it rises up in the atmosphere and then goes and falls at a greater height. Greater height, there are glaciers. And our Indian scientists have already observed what they call black carbon deposits. So the soot particles deposit on the glacier surface, and this will in the long run lead to more rapid melting of the glaciers. तो एक तरफ तो आपको चिंता है कि हमारे glaciers melt हो रहे हैं, दूसरी तरफ आप उसको speed up कर रहे हो. So clearly the government has not thought through or looked at the scientific data carefully enough. And this is scientific data that has been generated by our own scientists. So the committee recommended that you don't allow fossil fuel driven motor vehicles to go through to the end of the valley. You halt them at a major town before the narrow valley begins. Say, for example, Uttarkashi in the case of Gangotri, or Joshimath in the case of Badrinath. You can halt the traffic there, and from there you take the yatris in CNG or in electric buses up to the shrine. These are suggestions that we have made. We don't want to cut down yatris going to the shrines, but it has to be done in a sustainable manner. That's all we are saying.
Yeah, such a good
Okay,
suggestion. I
next
hope
please.
even people who want to go there on a pilgrimage should understand. ये अपने लिए है, हमको इसको बचाना है, क्योंकि हम आखिरी नहीं है यहाँ पर, ये दुनिया में हमारे बच्चे, बाल बच्चे सभी के लिए अगर ये बद्रीनाथ हो या चारधाम यात्रा सही सुरक्षित लगाना है, तो हमको थोड़े चीज़ करना ही पड़ेगा। जिस तरह हमारे रवि चोपड़ा साहब ने बताया, बद्रीनाथ अगर उत्तरकाशी और यमुनाद्री वहाँ पर और एक जगह वहीं रुक के वहाँ से हम सीएनजी या इलेक्ट्रिक बसेस से हम यहाँ पहुँच सकते, ताकि ये सही जो हमारे परिवार है वो सुरक्षित होगा और जन्म जन्मों तक ऐसी बरकरार रहेगा। तो ये अपने हाथ में है, क्योंकि सरकार जो है ये रीति नीति नहीं सोच रहे। उच्चतम न्यायालय भी उसको सोचना पड़ेगा। जब सरकार ने इस तरह हेरा फेरी कर दी, केवल कमर्शियल एस्टैब्लिशमेंट के लिए, कोई संस्था के लिए ये करने के लिए नहीं करना चाहिए। सुरक्षा डिफेंस फोर्सेस को माइंड में रखिए, साथ में किस तरह हम ये पर्यावरण को बचा के रखना है वो भी सोचना ज़रूरी है।
नेक्स्ट प्लीज।
यस सर। यस।
हाँ, now these are also, other than human beings, there are also wildlife over there which has as much right to live there as anybody else, and these are very precious, rare and very often endangered wildlife. On one hand we are trying to protect them, and on the other hand we are destroying their habitats. Next please.
जिस तरह हम केन बेटवा रिवर को भी
this is being done in violation of the law.
This is done in violation of the law and
भरे हुए हैं
क्या सर?
फॉर्म्स के अंदर, फॉर्म्स where they fill up the information for approval, झूठे आंकड़े भर दिए।
तो अगेंस्ट लॉ या बताइए सर प्लीज।
And then post facto clearances will be given.
De facto clearances, I think it is against law. Why Supreme Court doesn't go through these things? It is mind boggling. It's a big revelation. Against law, still Supreme Court allows everything. My goodness. Yes sir.
So these, I just listed many of the legal violations that we identified. I wrote a letter simply explaining all these violations to the Ministry of Environment and Forest. I did not even get an acknowledgement.
My goodness. When did you write, sir? When did you write?
The last line reads, the last line is post facto clearances, illegal muck dumps, etc. raise the question whether there is only Jungle Raj where forests are concerned.
It's a big issue. Post facto clearances. How are you giving clearances? Illegal muck dumps. After that, the way they are dumping, it is destroying. It is destroying forest and it is destroying the rivers at the base of such valleys. So forest is gone, rivers are gone. That is why we said Himalayas are in danger. This is what is very clearly, the pictures are there in front of you.
Slopes are going. Don't forget the mountain slopes. They are also going. So mountains, rivers, forests, all are going.
This is why we said Himalayas are in danger. Mountains, mountain slopes, forests and rivers, they are all going. This what conservation is all about. यही क्या है हमारा सुरक्षा और परिरक्षण? क्या है ये? पर्यावरण का परिरक्षण है क्या? इतने सारे लीगल वायलेशंस सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने किस तरह उनको ये करने के लिए दिया, समझ में नहीं आता। कोई डिस्कशन हमारे विधानसभा में होता या हमारे लोकसभा में इस तरह के कोई चर्चा ही नहीं होता। क्या मनमानी, क्योंकि ये सब कुछ हर एक नागरिक का हक है। ये हमारे नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज जो है हर एक नागरिक का हक है ये।
It is also our constitutional duty, Article 51A, that we have to ensure the protection and conservation of our environment. That's a duty that is, we are bound by that in the Constitution.
हर कोई नागरिक का जिम्मा बनता है आर्टिकल 51A के तहत कि ये इनको सब सुरक्षित, इनको परिरक्षण करने का दायित्व भी हर एक नागरिक पे ऊपर है। यही हमारे संविधान कहता है 51A आर्टिकल के प्रकार। कोई सुप्रीम कोर्ट या हो या कोई लोकसभा हो या विधानसभा, क्योंकि ये सब कुछ हमारे तहत ही चलते हैं, ये संविधान के तौर पर ये चलते हैं। और संविधान में 51A के तहत पर ये हर एक नागरिक का दायित्व है इनको बचा के रक्षा करके रखना। और इस तरह कुछ छूट हुई तो हम इनको सुप्रीम कोर्ट हो या लोकसभा हो या विधानसभा हो उनको प्रश्न करके इस तरह ना हो, क्योंकि हम आखिरी नहीं है इस दुनिया में। Yes, sir.
So when when this kind of destruction takes place on the slopes and the forests disappear, then the springs also get damaged, and many people in the mountains depend on these springs for their daily water supply. On one side, the government, the Niti Ayog, on the right hand side, bottom, you'll see there's a report of the Niti Ayog for how to conserve and protect the springs, and on the other side, you destroy them. Next, please.
नीति आयोग, राइट साइड आप राइट विंग, एक तरह आप उनको बचाने की बात करते हैं, लेकिन आपके लेफ्ट बाएं तरफ देखिए नीति आयोग, किस तरह आप उसको विध्वंस कर रहे हैं। आप विध्वंस के साथ फॉरेस्ट गई, रिवर्स गए, और रोजगार वहाँ लोगों के लिए, पीने का पानी भी खत्म हो गया। ये क्या है? कहते एक, करते एक। इसीलिए लोग जान जाइए और जानकार हो जाइए और जागो। यस सर।
Next, please.
यस सर।
And the the basic elements of disaster management are missing. Okay, so there is no, once you get to Badrinath, and supposing there's a major landslide as it happened in 2013, the yatris are stuck. No food will come from outside, and they can't go outside because there is no safe evacuation route. Then the poor army has to be called in, and they have to make makeshift arrangements with great difficulty. So they have not, even where we know that every year there is a landslide over here, अरे भाई वहाँ पे कोई safe detour बना दो, but that has not been done. Next, please.
This is for every citizen who wants to wish to go to Chardham. Question yourself. That is how you will make yourself to have sufficient and correct information. There is no disaster management in place. Unfortunately, our great army, we salute them. Again, they are called in and they try to save us with makeshift arrangements. ये क्या है नीति आयोग, ये क्या है लोकसभा, ये क्या विधानसभा, इस तरह के नीति।
So, in widening these roads in several locations, villages have been affected. Cracks have appeared in people's homes. Their slopes are sliding down. Muck is thrown into their villages, but there is no mechanism where they can go and complain and say, भाई इसका कोई इलाज कीजिए, हमें मुआवजा दीजिए, हम वहाँ नहीं रह सकते हैं. But there's no such formal mechanism. So they can go and appeal to the district magistrate, and the district magistrate is at the bottom end of the decision-making structure. Decisions are made in Delhi, so nothing happens. Next, please.
But how is that Supreme Court is keeping silent on such a big disaster happening with the habitats and living of the people?
Because anyway, we hope that the oversight committee that Justice Sikri is now heading, and they have to implement all the safeguards that we have proposed. We are hoping that they will be able to be more effective.
A very sorry state of affairs, sir.
Next,
It's a
please.
big damage is happening to not only Himalayas,
Yes.
the living of the people who are there. If they vanish from there, what happens next? Can you just ever imagine?
So finally, after seeing all this, the committee unanimously made this statement that this has been a high risk approach, as it has led to the triggering of a large number of major landslides. The committee agreed on this unanimously. Road width पे जितनी मर्जी हमारे differences हो, this is unanimous. Next, please.
My goodness, see
So
how
I think we've come to the end of the grave danger posed by the Char Dham Pariyojana. Now, I'll show you some very interesting slides. On this slide, if you look at the road over here, which begins at Haridwar and goes through the Pauri Garhwal district, that's the road going up to Badrinath. Okay?
yeah, Badrinath, here, Uttarakhand, yes, here it is. This is Badrinath.
No, that is Gangotri. Look on the right
This one,
side.
this one.
Where you see number 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay.
Yeah, here, yes.
That's the route to Badrinath. Okay.
This is Badrinath.
Now, on this route, you can see the number of landslides that took place in 6 weeks of the 2020 monsoon.
My goodness.
All right. All those are major landslides. And there are some parts of, now this is the road to Badrinath, this is the road to the Mana Pass, which has to be defended against the uh, Chinese incursions. Okay. Now, this road has to be kept disaster free. But I'll show you the state of this road. Aage chaliye.
Yeah. Shall I change the slide, sir?
Yes, sir. Now, 45 kilometers upstream from Rishikesh is a place called Tota Ghati. Okay, very sensitive. The rocks appear hard, but they've got fissures and fractures in them. And inside the mountain, there are caverns. Okay, there are caves inside the mountain. तो देखने में तो बड़ा ठोस लगता है, अंदर से कमजोर है. Click on the picture on your left.
We play it again so
Now
that
this is
after you explain, I'll replay it. Yes, sir.
no, this is a very sensitive stretch of the road, and back in the British time, no contractor wanted to construct this road. Finally, a man called Tota Ram, a contractor, came, and that's why it's called Tota Ghati, and he made a road which is only 3.75 meters. Now, if you want to expand it, if you want to widen it, you have to be very careful. You have to study that geology carefully. But that wasn't done. And despite all these accidents, they went ahead, they widened the road, and after widening the road, you see what happens? This whole stretch of the road just disappears because that slope is weak, and they are putting a lot of pressure on that stretch by taking more and more and heavier vehicles on that stretch. So after this widening was done, this stretch disappeared.
Let me play it once again.
Next, please. और ऐसे एक्सीडेंट्स में लोग मरते हैं.
सब कुछ को.
This driver jumped out before the rock came and crashed.
So he could jump out.
Yeah.
So this way, even we are harming even our defense movement also. This way we are harming our defense forces movement also.
Exactly. Next, please. Now this is the road to Badrinath. Keep that in mind. It's going up to the Mana Pass. Next, please.
Yeah, I'm trying to. What happened? Okay.
I don't know.
Yep.
Okay. Same road, 70 kilometers upstream from Tota Ghati now. Okay.
Okay.
Now you see this road is built on what we call fluvial debris that has been brought down by the river. This is not rock. This is mud, stones, and on that you have built a road. Now this is the Alaknanda River. It's a big river, and there is a dam downstream of this location. So what you are looking at is the reservoir of that dam. From the Terry Dam experience, we know that the slopes around the reservoir become weakened because of what is scientifically called the drawdown effect. We knew that. Therefore, we should have not done this road over here. In fact, this is an old road. You see the white arrows?
This one.
See the white arrows in that picture?
This one?
That was an old road. They should have tried to continue on that road.
Okay, here, which is there
But
already.
Here they have gone right by the. Now this landslide that you see here is going to keep on expanding in the years to come. Next, please.
So this is the road, Arrows Arch, which was already existing. Instead, they came down to Alaknanda, and that to the debris which fell from above. My goodness.
I'll just explain. This road next to the Alaknanda is a road that has existed there for some time. They've widened it. They were earlier trying to, during, I think, I'm not sure, but I think during the time of Brigadier Khanduri, when he was the Minister for Surface Transport, I think that's the time when they did this higher stretch. But rather than follow that, they've chosen this easier route, and this is an invitation to disaster. And this is the second perennial landslide on the road to Mana. Next, please.
My goodness, such an important stretch. We are.
Yes. Third, there is the old Himalayas Are. Now, this landslide opened up in the 1970s. 62 war ke baad against China. They were building these roads for the first time, and that's when this landslide took place. उसके बाद ये landslide कभी आज तक बंद नहीं हुआ है, despite crores and crores of rupees being spent on research, lots of PhDs. So, but here what they have done is they've gone to the other side of the river. They have avoided this stretch. Unfortunately, the other side of the river is also fluvial debris brought down by the river. It is also something that the river will continuously attack. Further up, you go further up the river and you come to this place called Pagal Nala. Pagal Nala is Pagal. It comes down every year.
Okay.
And you can't do much about it unless you do some very serious geological investigations and you put some money into some structures. For example, you may have a half tunnel over there. You may have a half tunnel in which the roof is of very strong steel, which will keep the debris out. So the debris will come, it will go over the roof of the tunnel into the sea, into the river, and the traffic can be made safe. But here, as you see, this Pagal Nala has come, it has blocked this road. Next, please.
Simple solutions they are avoiding. They don't want.
It's expensive. It's not simple, it's expensive.
Yes.
Now, you go further up this. Now, this is the stretch from Joshimath going up to Badrinath. And there is a place called Lambagar. At Lambagar, there is avalanche debris from the past sitting on the slope. It comes down every year at least once or twice during the monsoon. You can't save yourself from it. So what they did, they built another 10-15 meters into the river bed. Now, Alaknanda is not going to tolerate this insult that its bed is being encroached and invaded. Alaknanda will take that stretch out in times to come. Okay? What they should have done was to have built an underground tunnel below the river, gone to the other side where the rock is stronger, where there's no avalanche debris, and gone across the other side. That takes time and money to build. And they are in a hurry and they don't want to spend extra money. Now, further up, Lambagar is somewhere here. There's Lambagar in the middle of that yellow stretch on the left side.
Yeah, here.
Okay, Lambagar, yeah. And then further up the road, you'll see that circled area.
Yeah.
And circled area has 3 arrows going to the left.
Yes.
Those are 5 hanging glaciers up that mountain. And we know that every year there's one of those 5 will come down. And what we had proposed to the engineers was, you build a snow gallery over here. Don't try to widen the road.
Okay.
But you want your traffic to move without any obstruction. The snow avalanche will come, go over the roof of the snow gallery. It's like an open tunnel, and it will go over into the river. So your traffic can keep moving. It will not obstruct the traffic. But they want to widen the road over there. Now that's a very precarious location where they want to widen the river, the road.
This
Okay?
here.
So these are 5 what I call points where there will be regular. Every year we will face obstructions over here.
Still, they don't
Okay.
want to learn because they are putting all this pilgrimage into risk. Precious lives are being risked at the cost of ecology of
And
Himalaya
equally
and
movement of defense troops. Equally important, movement of defense
Def-
troops.
yeah, they are
Next,
destroying the
please.
free movement of anything to explain
Yeah,
on this right side? So this is how it happens every time.
that's it. I just wanted to show that
Right.
this is an example of what happens to that road when the river attacks it. The road is gone.
Never
This
play
happened
with
in
nature.
2013.
Never play with nature.
And this is an example of what happens to the road in a flood. Mandakini River was in flood in 2013. It just destroyed that road by the side of the river. Okay? Again, it was built on fluvial debris, all gone. This is the road to Kedarnath. Next, please. We had proposed that, there's an alternate route on the other side of the river, which is up at a height. We said, please develop that one.
They don't
But
want
they
to.
have chosen this one again. Next, please.
They are answerable to the nation. It's public money and public health. I mean, public lives as well as the nature. Oh, sorry.
Next, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. And finally, one example from the Gangotri Road. You see here, at the lower level, there's a yellow arrow and the Roman number 1 next to it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's where the road was once upon a time.
Okay.
Then they raised that road over here,
Number 2.
and that has also slid down. The current road is over here.
Number
Now
3.
we have scientific evidence of this slope, that this slope is gradually creeping downwards towards the river. Okay? And that's the Bhagirathi River. It's not a small river. It's a massive river. So, from niche se, the river is cutting your slope, and the slope itself is slowly creeping down. Okay. So now, to build roads in these areas where the slope is also very sharp, we are now just 45 kilometers from Gangotri. So you've seen the valleys at that location. These are not locations where you can build roads wherever and however you like. Next, please.
Then what is the solution? I mean, here you want.
The solution is to live within your means. Nature is giving you warnings, and nature is saying, don't burden me any further.
My goodness. See, old landside deposit. With that deposit, they are trying to make roads, and rivers are not going to keep quiet.
Next, please. And that's what happened here in 2010 on this slope, the very slope that I showed you.
Okay.
पूरे दुकानें गई, घर गए, सरकारी बिल्डिंग गई. Next, please. And the same thing on the road from Tanakpur to Pithoragarh in Kumaon. Now, since 1920, this little landslide has been growing and growing and growing. Okay? Lots of research done, but no permanent solution, no long-lasting solution to this. And we will keep repeating these mistakes. Next, please.
Habit of keeping mistakes.
Okay. So we'll skip this. I've already covered this. Now we come to Ganga. Okay? What the dams do to the rivers. So this is the source of the Ganga. Just 19 kilometers upstream from Gangotri is the Gaumukh cave. Next, please.
What is this at this top? This is this Himalayan
This
range?
I think is Shivling. This mountain is Shivling probably. I can't be 100% sure.
Yeah, this is the cave you mean to say.
Yeah. And that's where the Bhagirathi comes out of this. It's the snout of the glacier. Okay? It's the end of the glacier towards us.
Okay. So this is it's a beautiful picture. See the glacier end
Yeah.
part, and this is how a river starts. And the natural
Right.
vegetation, forest, and the valleys and rivers, they start from there. Am I right, sir?
इसके नीचे से there is a nice cedar forest about 8 or 9 kilometers downstream.
Wonderful.
Because this height is 3,850 meters.
3,850 meters. After this
So we
glacier,
are
everything starts.
12,000 feet above
Yeah.
sea level.
Now, this is the link when people were asking why Himalayas are in danger. This is why they are in danger. Am I right, sir?
Now we'll see why they're in danger. You go to the next slide.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so the Ganga gets its water from glaciers, the picture on the left, and it gets water from springs that feed smaller rivers, that feed bigger rivers and small rivers, all year round provide the water. Next, please. And in this whole region, there is a lot of interesting biodiversity. All kinds of, uh, there's the bird monal, the state bird, there's the brahmakamal, the state flower, and all these are, many of them are endangered. Here's a very shy animal called the snow leopard on the lower right hand side.
Yeah, here, this
Next,
one.
please.
This one.
Lower right hand side.
Is this the one?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a very shy animal and only lives in the uppermost peaks. Next, please.
All these are being endangered.
Yes. Okay, now what the National Institute of Hydrology had been observing, the discharge that is coming out of that cave that I just showed you, okay, and they are measuring that discharge. Now, the line of best fit indicates that on an average there is declining flow coming out of that glacier. Between 2000 and 2016, these measurements have been done by a government institution. On the other side, on the right hand side, you see the slopes of those mountains are quite barren. Huh? The forests have been cut quite some time ago. And as a result, if you look at the graph on underneath, there's Dr. J.S. Rawat of Kumaon University, who every year at a particular spot on that river, he goes and measures the discharge. 1993, the discharge was about 900 liters per second. And in 2013, it's down to about 90 or 100 liters per second. That's how much the flow has decreased. And in the next slide, I'll show you why. See, the deforestation has taken place over here. Can you click on this right hand side? Just click on it. Now this is not going to work because we don't have full screen. But try clicking on it. Let's see if anything happens.
Let's see.
No?
Yeah, I'm trying. Somewhere I think it should.
No, it may not. Because it has to go to full screen. Anyway, I'll explain what's happening. You see that there is a stream that is going across this picture, and at the bottom it meets. The bottom is on the right hand side. The mountain is sloping from left to right, and the stream meets that little river that I showed you, which is spring fed. In this watershed, there were
1 second, sir.
there were a large number of streams that fed the main stream in the valley, and all of them have dried up except for the main stream. That's it. So just like you see these small streams feeding it, there were a number of those small streams. There were 14 water mills in this watershed, and today there is only one left. Next, please.
They've all disappeared.
Yeah, because there's no water. So deforestation leads to this problem. On the other hand, we also dry up our rivers that are fed by glaciers. Now this is the Alaknanda on your right and Bhagirathi on your left. Both the locations you see a dam. Downstream of the dam there's no water flowing. All that water has been taken out, put into a tunnel, and that tunnel will drop the water 10-15 kilometers downstream. So between the dam here and the powerhouse, which is 10-15 kilometers downstream, there is no water flowing in the river. So whatever ecology survives on the bed of the river, that's all gone. Okay, next, please. I'll skip this one, but what this basically wants to tell you that the Ganga's unique property, it has a very high capacity to clean itself, to purify all the coliforms, etc., that come into the river, and that property is lost after every dam. That property becomes weaker and weaker. Next, please. Okay. Um, One more problem that is now becoming more and more rampant is the wherever you find dry riverbeds, then there is heavy sand mining that is taking place. Now, sand mining is very important because the sand layer traps a lot of the water and it feeds the aquifers on the sides of the river. Okay. Also, each time you take out a lot of sand, more sand is taken out than what the river brings during the year. When you do that, you change the slope of the river. The river becomes, the bed slope becomes steeper, the river flows faster, becomes more erosive. It eats the lands on its banks. And you can see the number of vehicles, how many vehicles there are. That this is the scene at Haridwar, massive amount, and all this is illegal. You're not supposed to use machines. River mining has to be done by manual labor.
Not
Next,
by
please.
machine, not by machines. So these are all, I don't understand how Supreme Court and governments ignore.
So the climate change impacts, scientists tell us, are going to be far more severe on the coastal areas and in the Himalayas than anywhere else in the world, except for the North and South Pole. Okay. Um, it will, as the water warms up, the basic unit of food that is present in the river, the zooplanktons and the phytoplanktons, they will all begin to die. uh, we have already seen that the winter precipitation in the Himalayas is reducing, and I showed you the reduced discharge in the river. The Gangotri glacier has been sliding back, and more cars, fossil fuel driven cars, and you'll have more black carbon on the glaciers, melting them faster. Next, please. Now, this is more dangerous. The next slide. See, when you have, let's take the case of Tiri Dam. Tiri Dam has two main rivers feeding it. The big one is the Bhagirathi, and the smaller one is the Bilangana. The Bilangana is like the Mandakini river that I showed you a little while ago. The Bilangana river comes from a glacier. And in this case, you look at the picture on the left, it was taken in 1999, satellite imagery. There is a small portion that is
Yeah,
yes, that is marked in yellow. Okay.
yeah.
Now, between 1999 and 2020, in 20 odd years, the area of that lake has expanded by, this is the lake that is forming. As the glacier shrinks, sometimes it begins to fragment. Parts of it become water and parts of it are still ice. That water is a lake, okay? And that lake begins to grow. It has grown 133% in the 20 years in this sequence of pictures. These pictures have never been seen outside the lab, so you are lucky you are seeing it for the first time.
Wonderful.
Now, this is a moraine dam lake. Moraine dam means that it's a natural dam which has been formed by debris, silt brought down by the glacier. Okay, and the wall of that is going to become weaker and weaker, whereas more and more water, as the lake expands and more water collects, and when it breaks, it will be like the Kedarnath break, exactly like that. Chorabari Glacier, same case. Moraine Dam Lake, same thing happened. And then there are 2 or 3 small dams in this river stretch. They will all go. Finally, it will hit the Teri Dam and threaten that dam.
My goodness.
Next, please.
So if you don't understand, you are gone.
Yes. And this is just an example of what a small river. This is a tiny river called Khiro Ganga. But these are glacial rivers. They've got so much glacial debris left behind a few million years ago by the glacier as it receded, that when there's a very heavy rainfall, it collects all that debris and flows with that debris. The valley is narrow. Someplace the debris gets blocked, forms a temporary dam. The river water collects behind it, gets more pressure, breaks the dam, moves further. But as it moves further, it takes all the extra debris down. So, with each temporary dam it breaks, the river gets more and more destructive. And what it did in 2013 was to destroy this Vishnu Prayag project's dam over here. You don't see the dam, it's
Here,
gone.
it's gone.
Hmm. And the river, which was flowing in this whole valley, has been pushed to one side. And Lambagad is somewhere over there.
Here,
Next, please. Yeah, somewhere on the right hand side, if you see that there's the toe of the mountain jutting out, uske baad Lambagad hai. Okay? Yeah, you got it.
if you abstract, it will throw you out. Shall I click here?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to put the slide back in here. So we'll skip. This was another scene of the flood when it was filling up the debris in the Vishnu Prayag dam that I just showed you. Sorry, I forgot to put the picture here.
Yeah, no problem.
Next,
Sir.
please. Okay, so I think I've given you enough evidence that we are destroying the mountains, the rivers, and the forests, and the wildlife, as well as the local people and their culture.
And
So
direct
the
question.
Himalaya is in great danger.
Himalayas are in danger because you have connected them with the glaciers, and through glaciers you have rivers, water coming out, and after which you have big forests, valleys, mountains, slopes, the people surviving there, trying to eke out a living and protect them. And some areas, afforestation they have done in a big way in Gangotri area. All this is going haywire, and even defense for our army to move around, it has become dangerous now to protect us, our broad borders. Ultimately, it is threatening environment, it is threatening our own survival in the form of security. Am I right, sir?
Yeah. And Dr. Tangela, even for that Badrinath eco-sensitive zone, we've asked the BRO, Border Roads Organization, which is constructing that part of the road. We've not told them, don't build the road, don't widen it. What we have said is, please do a detailed and careful environmental impact assessment. Get it done by a reputable institution, not by a private fly-by-night consultant. And then observe the recommendations of safety and security that they are recommending.
Fly by night entrepreneurs, they land and they disappear, but it is our own survival, it is our environment, our ecology, our water, our forest, and our survival, because the weather, how important the weather is. And चार धाम यात्रा जो भी जाना चाहते हैं, आप ये सब चीज़ों को मद्देनज़र रखिए। आप हमारे हाथ में
और
है।
एक चीज,
या
एक और चीज कि अब जो मौसम परिवर्तन हम देख रहे हैं कि जब बारिश होती है यहाँ पर, even in Dehradun we are seeing that whenever it rains during the monsoon in the last few years, the rains have been very heavy. You get fewer time of rain, but when it rains very heavily. So the total amount of rainfall may not change, but it will be far more destructive.
this is because of these changes, because when you remove forest cover and everything, it is becoming destructive. And directly when they ask, they say nothing will happen to Himalayas.
Okay, so that's the end of my story.
So, one passing for a common man, what should they do now? What is the one liner? What is the effect of safeguarding Himalayas, valleys, those rivers, those forests, those glaciers?
See, the effect is that we will save ourselves. There is a whole population of 450 to 500 million people who live in the Ganga basin. Many of them live in the Ganga plains. You know that plains are most densely populated. And these rivers are extremely crucial. Their survival is extremely dependent on these rivers. Therefore, we have to be far more careful of what we are doing with our environment. Okay? So, first, most important in the mountain areas in particular, the backbone of the mountain environment is the forest. We have to save the forest.
We have to save the forest.
People must get themselves informed and they must act to save the forest. याद रखिए कि ये वही इलाका है जहां पर 70 के दशक में चिपको आंदोलन हुआ था.
Yes, Bahuguna ji.
बहुगुणा जी, चंडी प्रसाद भट्ट, गौरा देवी, lots of other women, Bonnie Devi, Krishna Devi, I remember so many of them.
तो ये सब कुछ प्रयत्न किए, लेकिन फिर भी ये सब कुछ हो रहा है.
That was 50 years ago, no?
Now Mr. Ravi Chopra is the present form now. Now what should people say 50 years after this show? How should they preserve it?
I hope, you know, engineers know nothing about the environment. They know about inanimate objects. The ecology, they have never been taught, they don't understand it, they don't want to understand it. But what we are trying to tell I was on a committee for technical education, drafting curriculum, and I said, just like you have only 3 subjects in the first year, physics, chemistry, and maths, I said, add a 4th one, ecological science. It is absolutely critical now that every engineer, it doesn't matter, you may be a computer scientist, but you have to study ecological science. Your life depends on it.
बट ये खाली एक संस्कृत के जैसा इंटरमीडिएट में एनवायरनमेंट सब्जेक्ट लगा है, वो कब एग्जाम लिखते कैसा है कोई नहीं पढ़ाता, उसका महत्व ही नहीं है, खाली मार्क्स लेने के लिए है वो.
I am focusing on those 2 words. I don't want a subject called environment. That doesn't really address the problem. Ecological science. What is the science of the living world?
Wonderful. What is the science of the living world? Before we say bye, now you have told about Himalayas. From Himalayas, I hope the Ganga happens. Now they are trying to clean Ganga का प्रक्षालन कर रहे हैं, लेकिन ऊपर जहाँ से आ रहा है वहाँ उसको खत्म कर रहे हैं. ये कैसे देखते हैं आप?
See, they are focusing on cleaning the river. River cleaning is fairly simple. उसके ऊपर जो भी गंदगी बह रही है आप उसको आराम से हटा सकते हो, और वो उन्होंने किया है. So the river looks clean.
सर ऑडियो रवि जी, आपका ऑडियो गया. ऑडियो सडनली योर ऑडियो हैज गॉन. Yeah.
Okay, now you can hear me.
Yes.
Right? So, the coliform bacteria in the river is not that easy to clean. The river has the capacity to purify itself and get rid of the bacteria, but for that it needs its sediments. The sediment is the magic, and the sediments are held behind the dams. So every time you build a dam on the Ganga or one of its tributaries, you are holding back the sediment. The magic of the Ganga is held back. So first thing you need in a river, you know the meaning of Ganga, right? The word Ganga comes from the Sanskrit root gam gacha, to go, water that moves, that flows. Now, if you are going to fiddle with the flow of the water and keep large stretches of the river dry, what is the point of cleaning? What are you cleaning? So, first thing requirement is to sustain the flow. We know how much water the river requires to do its natural functions, to sustain the life on its bed, on its banks, on its floodplains. After that, if there is more water, that we can take. We are also part of nature. Nature has designed all the rivers and mountains for us also, but we must do that within limits, right? What did Gandhiji say? The world has enough for everyone's need. Earth has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for greed. And that's the rule we have to follow. जो आपने शुरू में कहा, हमें सिर्फ अपनी चिंता नहीं करनी है, अपनी आने वाली पीढ़ियों की भी चिंता करनी है, वो जीव जंतु जानवरों की भी चिंता करनी है. ओके?
तो अभी गांधी जी को तो ख़त्म ही कर दिया पंजाब में और दिल्ली में. भगत सिंह साहब का शहीद तो उन्हीं को रखना है. Oh, you are audible. I'm not audible.
Okay.
You are audible now.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm telling before I say
Okay.
bye. Gandhiji's favorite word. Earth has got everything what we need, but the greed. It is nothing. There is nothing for greed. जितना भी चाहिए अपने ज़िंदगी गुजारने के लिए, गांधी जी ने कहा वो हमें देता है ये पर्यावरण और यह संसार. लेकिन जब ज़्यादा आप कुछ सोचते पाने की, उसके लिए कुछ हम पाया नहीं जाएगा. तो इसीलिए गांधी जी का हर स्टेट में, अब जो पंजाब आम आदमी पार्टी ने वहाँ भगत सिंह साहब की और अंबेडकर साहब की लगाई, गांधी जी को तो ख़त्म ही कर दिया. और जिस तरह पर्यावरण को ये लोग ख़त्म कर रहे हैं. और गंगा ऊपर से जो आप सेडिमेंट्स की बात करते हैं, तो मैजिक है द रिवर सेडिमेंट्स जो ग्लेशियर से लेके आता है, वो सेडिमेंट से वो अपने आप को खुद को साफ कर सकता है. लेकिन आप डैम्स बन के, क्या सर?
There is a difference between साफ and स्वच्छता.
Yeah.
स्वच्छता is purification.
Yeah.
सफाई is cleaning.
तो स्वच्छता, मैं आई टेक बैक माई वर्ड, जो स्वच्छता जो बात करते हैं, हमारे स्वच्छ भारत प्रधानमंत्री की फेवरेट प्रोग्राम. प्रधानमंत्री जी, आप नदियों के हिमालयन से शुरू करिए आपकी स्वच्छता, ताकि हम सब खुशहाल रह सके. और आप माँ गंगा की बात करते हैं, आज आधार के साथ आपके सामने लगाए. अगर स्वच्छ गंगा होना चाहिए तो ये डैम की ज़रूरी है क्या? इस तरह की रोड बनाने की ज़रूरी है क्या? इस तरह हमारे पेड़ पौधे और जानवरों को ख़त्म करने की ज़रूरत है क्या? शुड वी डिस्ट्रॉय आवर ओन फॉरेस्ट, आवर ओन वैलीज, आवर ओन वाटर by constructing dams? These sediments you are not allowing to flow so that they can clean themselves and they can purify, not clean, they can purify themselves. Am I right, sir? They can purify themselves so that you will get pure Ganga water. Now I hope Yogi Adityanath ji, you will take a lead, like Uttarakhand Chief Minister should take a lead. All those who are there on the upfront on the Himalayan regions, all the states, it is there in your hands. At the same time, see that our armed forces reach the borders to secure us. How can they do? By not adventuring and destroying forests and the slopes or valleys. Again, throwing the debris in the rivers. Allow them to flow naturally. Anything else? Last one word for all the generations to come, including the present generations, including those who are at the helm of Supreme Court Committee and the government who matter. What would Mr. Ravi Chopra, an environmental scientist and activist?
I cannot improve on Gandhiji. Earth has enough for everyone's needs, but not for greed.
Wonderful.
I cannot improve on that. Okay?
Mr. Ravi Chopra is a very simpleton. He says he cannot improve on Gandhiji's slogan, Earth has got everyone what one needs, but not for greed. So let us end this show here, and I am very, very thankful to Mr. Ravi Chopra ji. And God willing, we will have series as and when you have time, when you feel there is something more to sensitize people. So you have come out really
Thank
well
you.
with such wonderful PowerPoint presentation. I hope we have done our bit. It is for Supreme Court, Core Committee, Uttarakhand government, Uttar Pradesh, oh yeah, all those government states in part of Himachal, I mean the Himalayas, and not only Himalayas, far-reaching other states also. So every political party, every citizen should question the government's स्वच्छता. केंद्र और राष्ट्र सरकार की स्वच्छता अभियान के ऊपर आप प्रश्न करिए. यू स्टार्ट क्वेश्चनिंग द एटीट्यूड ऑफ स्वच्छ भारत. इट शुड स्टार्ट फ्रॉम हिमालयास, अदरवाइज everything is gone. Thank you, sir. Take care. We will retelecast
Thank you very
this.
much.
We will retelecast this on environmental channel. We
Okay.
will announce a flyer and date also. Subsequently, we will telecast.
Okay.
Do support Dr. TSPR channels, and we are grateful to all these wonderful guests like Mr. Ravi Chopra, who have made this channel, as he rightly said, the perennial of knowledge, utmost knowledge, good information, so that you take the information, you understand, you become aware, then you start discussing so that you can decide, and that is what democracy is all about. That means you become totally, eternally aware, as every individual, every citizen of this wonderful country is the owner of all the natural resources, and you are the constitution. आप संविधान हैं
Custodian.
सर.
You are the custodian. The constitution wants you to protect it.
The constitution through 51A article wants you to protect it because it is your property and you are the constitution. आप संविधान है और रक्षा करने की दायित्व भी आर्टिकल 51A के तहत पर भी नागरिक होने के नाते आपके ऊपर ही है, और आपकी जिम्मेदारी है, केंद्र और राष्ट्र सरकार हो या सुप्रीम कोर्ट कमेटी हो, अगर वो नहीं रक्षा कर सकते आपको करना पड़ेगा 51A आर्टिकल के तहत पर. थैंक यू वेरी वेरी मच सर. टेक केयर.
Thank you.
Good night for all the Indians. Sukha Nidra Shubharatri for the world over. Good morning, good afternoon and good evening. As Himalayas in your country protect the nature. Bye sir.